这个错，巴拉本节三年多吧，就三年就当做给就能了，将就帮到大年加上这大概就是这个状态。巴拉本节三年多吧，就三年就当做给就能了，将就帮到大年加上这大概就是这个状态。巴拉本节三年多吧，就三年多三年多，都去帮的，相当的相当的，怎么过当的了，差钱。哎呀。他卡上俺做的了累了，电脑设计。
So,
嗯，
yes, last time we arrived on the Tibetan page 35, the last part, yeah, Dena, yeah, the beginning.
我的这下，他电脑设了的，俺那是大马的了，搞十几样的设了的，最近都俺好年都俺那是老了去写个都是，的下运的，他们的呢老了解决的，俺绿俺那是绿色写个多啊，的老有的写个样的是，得了的呢，俺是他样的家用个样的是。我是的，我留了点呢，我是他样的家用过要的是吧？加上的，那的那些他妈的去个东西的个，的呢这个结束，干啥个东西的个人吧，都是给他写个要的是。我留通话了，告诉了他留了点呢，我是留查过的，加上但是留的他妈通话去，等得了点呢，俺就通话去呢，都是给他用的是。在马到这个干啥个东西当去个东西的，查拉越的给这早晚的马来是，干啥个大麦当去个大麦的，查拉越的给这马来是，这干是都是几个给开发了的呢，的呢，我的人手的这个这个，然后呢又把这人。东巴桑当年这个啦，让我的这个东色的，刚才让我的这个东巴的，是干啥的都东印的，干啥的东巴让我的这个东印的，干啥个单的，得来先别干啥来，先别去新的都东印的，让我的这个东巴东印的，真去个单的是吧？我这个呢做的是吧？
So, just to say that first of all, when we all have that feeling I or me, it means that on the very beginning we grasp our body or any other aggregate. Yeah? So independence on ascertaining the body or any other aggregate, we will ascertain the person or the I or the me. So that's why when we grasp at the personal self, we necessarily first grasp at the self of phenomena, which are here the aggregates. Yeah? So that's the steps. Yeah? The first step is to see and to grasp the other phenomena than the person. And in dependence on that, we will grasp the person, the self of the person. Yeah, so because usually speaking, we ascertain a person depending on ascertaining the aggregates of the person. So it's not at all the question of gross and subtle mode of grasping. This is exactly the same mode of grasping, the person or the other phenomena. It's just that depending on the basis which is observed or the basis of emptiness, we will speak about the grasping of the self of phenomena and the grasping of the self of the person. And if we negate this existence from its own side, of the person, we will speak about the selflessness of the person and any other phenomena than the person. If the very existence by its own side, from its own side, is negated with regard to any other phenomenon than the person, we will speak about the selflessness of phenomena.
那的那印的，俺就上单，俺才是老多啊是。俺写的， 내 풍부라 때는 따와 잠시 내 풍부라 때는 또왜 파다 잠시 봐 또왜 봐 민지 따와 잠시레스 민가르다 봐 있는데 되게 아 기스럽다기 있는데 라파다기 있는데 민기 또왜 파다 봐래마다 코란게 뭐네 아 가서 유된된 거네 두산자치 제야 말했어 다른 가사스데 기스럽서 여봐다 다른 소리했어 그런 공부를 때는 민파 민지다 다른 거 여봐 소리했어 그 여다 근데 민대 가왔다고도 지 제가 전화 라야 말았어 나대 라야 말았어 응
So here, as we said, this is exactly the same mode of grasping. And usually speaking, when we speak about me or I, it's necessarily done depending on the aggregates. Yeah, because the me or the person or the I and so on are merely imputed, conceptually imputed independence on the aggregates. So if we speak about anybody, if we say Christophe, if we say Rafa, if we say any person, if we speak about any person, it's just okay to say that we apply that name independence on the aggregates. Yeah, so if we are satisfied by that, that's okay. If we are not satisfied by that and we check which is the true referent of the designation, then we cannot find anything besides the mere name.
와다 된대라 되는데 다 공사 쪽에 되나 세대 풍부 다동 준비 딘진데 풍부 다도 주반 준비 딘진데 있으므로 자상 풍부 다도 주바스 풍부 템바른 준바스 풍부 랑원에 주바른 준바스 풍부 랑신기 여반 준바스 상마 민민자와르마도 전다치 승부야레스 풍부 다도 주바른 준비 딘진데 다 가라했을라데 최고 당진스 라고레스 로한테 당진들아 최고 당진스 라고레스 대 시체네 되네 신의 간사가 당진데 깨바레스 로 제가 깨요 값수 토만 간사가 당진데 뭐라게 대지수 말에 간 대최고 당진데 뭐라게 대지수 간사가 당진 깨봐 원조다 데레스
So here in the text, we are in English on page 20. And the last part of the page, His Holiness says, therefore, we have the grasping at true existence or the grasping at a self of phenomena as a grasping at true existence that adheres to the self of the aggregates. And on the basis of this arises the grasping at a personal self. So as we said, there are different ways to speak when we speak about the self-grasping. It's a grasping at inherent existence, existence from its own side, true existence, existence by its own characteristics, existence in a real existence, existence in reality without depending on the mere imputation and so on. So all those types of negations, yeah, if we speak of selflessness, then all those negations are the same. That's the same level. So as we see on the text, we first grasp the inherent existence of the aggregates, and depending on that, we will grasp at the personal self. So the same type of grasping, the grasping at the inherent existence of the person.
마야 나도 세 나데네 직달라 자나송데 나이 풍불라 나이 가서다 풍불로라 샤네스 다데네 나오냐면 로케기도스 내 풍부대 당불로라 샤자데네 나오냐면 로시키기도 와스 제가 데네게다 나오냐면 로케야데 숨어다 지다케베 실라드네 최근던지들레 연구야레스 가이스나 내 풍부대 로라 샤네 나오냐게도 와스 제가 지다 세데타 가사가 단제데다 최근 단제데데 게 림바스 용단 데레스 가사가 단제데라 때네 최근 단제데 게 고레세데 가이스는 지다 게 외실라 최근 단제 레바텐 슬로 레용도 와서 저거 던지 말이 받대 시체네 네 간사가 던지 껴와 인스네 무슨나데 다데네 말이 받대 저는 유게네로 랑싱기 마투신 친지 로바 랑싱기 여바른 짐베스 간사가 던지 있는다 저거 던지 임바 있는다 다 간사당 추세되기 내다데로 내루스는 문에 됐어 간사 문에 간사 쓰다 간다져라 간사를 시험에 추스 간다져라 세케쇼 내루스나 단절라 내루 좀 망고셔 내루 타도나 세지라데 된 동네 간을 계시하고 야래 내루 좀 망고 쉬어줘라 어 좀 망고 쉬어줘 이거 때네 되네 타도나 가라스라데 너다 rāngwāni chūka tōng sāchī kāla yārē sūrwa, kēzān dē sūngu yārē. Mārī bādē yūgī nēlū rāngshīngi mātū shīntō chīnchī lō bārē, sūrwa nēlū thār tū bādē. Thār tū na kānsā sēdē, sū kāla tēwā mē bā rāngwāni yō bāchī sūng, pōmbū sīlā dē, shēn kāla tēmē rāngwā yō bāchī sūng zīndē gyōr, tē zīndē ngē dē lā mārī bā sīlā chō bārē sūrwa.
Um, yes, here the text will speak about the view of the transitory collection. Yeah? So applying this to the view of the transitory collection, when the cognition that thinks I is produced, once my aggregates have appeared to cognition or to awareness, depending on the fact that the apprehension of the self of phenomena comes at the basis of the arising of the view of the transitory collection, this ignorance that grasps the self of phenomena constitutes the ground upon which the view of the transitory collection, which is the apprehension of personal self, arises. Yeah, so here the view of the transitory collection is the self-grasping of the person in our own continuum, as we said, when we think about me, I, and so on. And because this me or this I and this person has to appear once the aggregates have appeared, it's necessarily the case that there is the self-grasping of phenomena first. And depending on that, we will have the view of the transitory collection. Yeah, so that's the steps of arising of those types of grasping. Yeah? And then His Holiness says, and this ignorance grasps at the opposite of the true nature of phenomena. Yeah, so we can speak about the true nature of the person, the true nature of the other phenomena other than the person. And their true nature, their ultimate nature is selflessness, is emptiness. And the ignorance grasps the phenomena and the person in the opposite way. Yeah, so it's totally antithetic with the way things exist. So of course, there are many different natures of phenomena and of the person, the mode of abiding, of modes of existence of those phenomena and persons. But the final one would be emptiness of existence from its own side. Yeah, so this is the true nature of the phenomena and the person. Still, because of ignorance, we grasp the person and phenomena as existing from their own side. So here, that's why His Holiness says that the view of the which grasps at the self of phenomena is the ground upon which the view of the transitory collection arises.
제가 간사세디 풍불아 파때나 따바 잠지레스라서 데넬로지레 네로 데넬로 타도 말해대 간사스도 유지된 레지레스 다 간사가 예다 데라데네 다 간사스 여봤던데 정가 심벌 쳐고래 다른 간사스데 파 풍불아 때나 따송 데나 신지 취 간다 간이 바이나 소소 다시라 때나 파다 잠지 다가란 거 쳐도 여봐샤 그래스 그 많이 봐자 코 간디스 두도 제가 좋아하잖아 다 가르치나 되니 띵이에 요마레 게시니에나 랑원에 요바시니에 보러 마도지기 녀서 셴 요마레스 내가 인도전다 가레스라도 간사세데 소소게 풍부된도 알레 풍부된 때는 딱이나 풍부된도 열어봤다 얘나 다 풍부세나 가레스 도스가 짜간로는 풍부 차시에 단적도 라이체 요마레스 풍부라 때네 따바레스 라우르 마도지 풍부 나네 세네 러그르스 제라요 말에 Tēnā shīnshī, ngā rāntsā phūmbō, ngā rāntsā lū sēdē yā, lū kī chāshē rē rē lā tēnē tāpa tsaṁ chī rē mā tō, ngē chāshē tē kētā pāsē nā lū sē rē rāyē yā mā rē sī. Sēm nī dā rā rē, sō sū chāshē lā tēnē tāpa tsaṁ chī rē mā tō, gyū ngā jī lā sō bā tē rā lā tēnē tāpa tsaṁ chī rē mā tō, sēm sē tē nī kī mā rē sī. Chē sā, dī kāi sā nē lū tē rē sī, nē lū tē rē sī. Tā nilu tī yinpa yinā, nilu dāgarā shāgōrā mātā, tī māyīngā chī kō ngō rāngwa nē yobā chī nzīngā chūgā, tā kānsā kā tāngzī rā chūgā tāngzī sītā, tā marī bāsī chā nē rwa. Nilu tī tībar chī kēngi lō tī lēng gu yā rā sī rwa.
So, yeah. Yes, the person is merely imputed independence on the aggregates. Yeah, so that's its very mode of abiding, mode of existence. And if we are satisfied with that, that's okay. Yeah, we can say, we can speak about anyone, then that works. Yeah, that person is merely imputed depending on its aggregates. And that would be the same for any other phenomena. Yeah, any other phenomena is merely imputed independence on its own basis of imputation. Yeah, so there is nothing more than that. And if we want to look for something more than that, we will never find it. We will never find anything which exists from its own side without being merely imputed. Yeah, so when we speak about a person, that's the same. Yeah, the person is merely imputed independence on the aggregates. And if we check the aggregates themselves, for instance, the body or any other aggregate, we cannot find anything if we look for the true referent. Yeah, something besides the mere name, which is applied to a whole set of parts. Yeah, for instance, the body is merely imputed depending on its many parts. And if we really look for something which exists besides the mere designation, we cannot find anything. So any aggregate like the body is like this, but also we could say that the mind is also merely imputed independence on its many parts. And that's the very nature of those phenomena. They exist like this. They exist as being merely imputed independence on something else. And but our ignorance thinks or believes that things, phenomena, persons, and so on, exist from their own side, exist without being merely imputed independence on the basis of imputation. So that's why the ignorance obscures the way things exist. Yeah, it obscures us. It impedes us to see the very nature of phenomena and persons.
Tēsā kānsā sēdē phūmbō tā shirshē nē, kānsā shitā gā dōwās. Tā ngē lū sēdē yā, lū kē chāshē tā shirshē nē tā gā dōwās. Tēnā shīngi, tā ngā tā ngē lū lē tūskara tāpa nā shīnshē nē, shē tamjē sāldā nā chibu chikyā rēs. Kāmbā chīla chāshāba yinā nē, kāngbē kē tōwa tā wā tā tēnē, chi tsikpa ta ki ngun ta kola soba teta tene kangpa stawa ra ma to chigi teta la ma tenpa chashe te pa seba yana kangpa se yo ma res pe deshin ta teta tamche kala koresina pa tene taba tsamchi yor ta sila de tene taba tsamchi re sila de o tatun tsegan tsewe sena ngo rangu ne toba mebe rangu ne chi chuyo ma re sila u yore chesan rangshingi tongpa sila de, kansa rangshingi tong sila, kansa rangshingi tongpa re ma to chigi, tanyi to yebe tongpa marada si tsuko kuya re. Kansa 풍부人性这个动法人嘛的，人性这个动是老算，动的，他也都有个动是那么算是，加上人性的这个动是，他也都有个出考古过来的是。
嗯。
我明个怕他什么意思了的，我人性这个动是怕考古来的是，可以你的骗子几个去了抓起来，考古来的是吧？嗯。
So here, here, so as we said, the person is merely imputed independence on its basis of imputation, and that's the very same way to speak about other phenomena. Yeah, the basis of imputation itself, the aggregates, are merely imputed independence on their own basis of imputation. Yeah, so we can apply that to any illustration, like for instance, a house. Yeah, a house is merely imputed independence on its parts. You can speak about the roof and the walls and the windows and so on. But no, none of its parts can be called a house. It's not possible. So the house cannot be found within its very basis of imputation. But still the house exists. So if it cannot be found in its basis of imputation and it exists, then it exists as a mere imputation. It is merely imputed independence on its parts. So that's why it cannot be found in its basis of imputation. If it were to be found in its basis of imputation, that would mean it exists from its own side, but it's not the case. Yeah, it is totally empty of inherent existence, of existence from its own side, existence, self-existence, and intrinsic existence, as you can call it if you wish. Yeah, so we say it is empty, anything is empty of inherent existence. We don't say that anything is empty of existence. That's not the case. So ideally, if we really understand the fact that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, then implicitly it would mean then they exist as mere imputation. Yeah, if they don't exist without, being imputed, if they were to exist in their very basis of imputation, it would mean that they exist inherently. And now, if we say they are totally empty of inherent existence, it means that they exist as mere imputations. So those two understandings should help each other.
现在去看他看见了，让给我预习的，让给我要的是了，来的预习的，他应该忘给要的是，都不要忘给要的是，都不要打仗都要的是，民给趴下仗都要的是，他的干了个是呢，民给趴下仗嘛，都不要忘给多完了，南仗都要的是了对。낭자 많이 베게 랑원에 요 말에 민게 파샤서 많이 베 랑원에 요 말에 스타나 무시 들라고 야래 세상 유교 여바 임발라 랑원에 메스 라 낭상 레슬라데 나완데 템바레슬라고 야 말에 하고서 낭상 치레마다 나완데 템바르시는 것도 되나와나 시지 야 말레슬라고 야레스로
Mm. So yes, here if we say that phenomena exist conventionally, it means they exist as mere imputations, as mere designations, as a mere name which is applied to a whole set of characteristics, the basis of imputation. Yeah, we could say that phenomena exist as mere appearances. Yeah, so if we say that, then it implies that they cannot exist from their own side. That's the very a crucial point here. Yeah, it means that no phenomenon can exist as it appears because they appear one way and they exist another. So it means that they don't exist truly. They don't exist the way they appear. Yeah, so it means that any phenomenon is a mere imputation. It doesn't exist in its own basis of imputation.
아즈레 다도 상다제 되네 아 먼저 다 시큰지직 토를 상담바 이네야 되네 알테 타야 짬치마도 유랑경원에 메스 앙알아 랑경원에 짓는 게도 때 가라에서 나완 뒤tem바 말에서 싫어
Mhm.
디 낭삼 지르마도 나와데 때마 싸우나 말이야. 낭삼 세데 때마 임바 지기요. 디 낭삼르다 세데기 나와 때마 임바데 지기요레스. 때마 도바 임바 지난기 두디 지기요레스 파. 제가 다 때네 따바 삼레스. 때네 요레스나 치라 때네 요레스라디 차실라 때네 요레. 류기 차실라 때네 류 요레. 다시 풍부라 때는 나 열었을 인데 가서 때 봤을 때 가라 고고도스는 마템베 랑원에 요 지금 랑원도 두바데 민두스나 고고요래 때문에 랑원지 민두스 고고요래 그래서 아주도서 가인스나 초전에 식디 가서 식사 된다데 한창 서무 시간 조용데 가라 때 nen데 살당 고요래
Mm. So here, we can think about any phenomenon. Any phenomenon is exists merely conventionally. Yeah. So when we say merely conventionally, it means that it cannot exist from its own side. Yeah. So phenomena appear to us as if they were truly existent, but they are not. Yeah. So that's why they cannot exist the way they appear to us. That's why they are fake in one sense. Yeah, they are not true. They are not truly existent, and they don't exist the way they appear. They exist as mere imputations, depending on their own parts, and they appear as if they were not merely imputed. Yeah. So, of course, that's the way for the person. The person is merely imputed depending on its own basis of imputation, which are the aggregates. And any other phenomenon depends is merely imputed in dependence on its own parts. Yeah. So it means that no phenomenon exists from its own side, exists without being merely imputed. So that's the meaning here is very profound, is very deep. So that's why we really need to think and think precisely.
반된 나와줘야되기 우마 시접은 제외 나와 간데 송어서나 달라 다 세대 타이에도 유베 다스 가라고 라구야래 다 메스데 갈라고야래 대니기 캐바 간데레스 어디 송야래 다다 메집에 다데 가인스나 셴라 마토베 라운드 주바데 다다 메집에 다데 다스 라 다 메집에 게데네 아 가사 타이에도 유베 다데 다 메바 때란 베세기 시대를 다스 저다 다 다스 집어라기도 시 타이에도 여러 시 타이에도 메다 하고다 뉴모 쩌나 말인 지소라 딸에 주고 로에 통조지 다닌 디유도 또하잖아 다닌 디유도 또하잖아 쓰다 다디 타이에도 여봐시 nenjuru bani daden gogoresren oda morang shingi chobaden gagores dade sida dani minrawa shirwa
So there is a commentary from Acharya Chandrakirti of the Chatu Shataka, composed by Aryadeva, the 400 stanzas. And in his commentary, Acharya Chandrakirti would say that there is a self which exists conventionally. And when we speak about selflessness, it means that we refer to something that never existed, a kind of self that never existed. So that's why we need to see the difference between the two. Of course, that's the same name, self and selflessness, and we need to see the difference between the two. So if we speak about selflessness, it's always a kind of self which were inherently existent or existent autonomously or independently, without depending on anything else. This is refuted. Yeah, so there is no independent self, there is no autonomous self or no inherent self. Yeah, so that's why we speak about selflessness. But we never discard or refute the conventional self. Yeah, it has to be observed and it has to be accepted as conventionally existent. So that's why there is a stanza in the Madhyamaka from Acharya Chandrakirti when he says, Nyamu Journal, knowledge is all a talent, and so on. So he says that all the mistakes come from the view of the transitory collection, the afflictions and the defilements all come from this transitory collection. And then he says that the yogi, having ascertained that the very basis of that transitory collection is the self, then the yogi will discard the self. So in this very same stanza, there are two occurrences of the same word self. But one exists, it is the object of observation of the ignorance, and the other one is the self-grasping, the object of the self-grasping, so it has to be discarded. So we have to be careful that it's the same name, but one exists conventionally, the other one doesn't exist even conventionally.
맞았어. 대나신전에 아리안데베 오마 시자바 나라라 데꾼스로 가리 이나나 뭐뭐 간트 신바 이나스고 데꾼 라와 메바데스 떠바메베 라왕 두요 마레스 떠바메베 떠메 라왕지도 두 메바데 사마 뚜루레스로인데 사마 뚜루레다 떠메 라왕진 두바 야마르다 코니 베데 웬데레다 무슨 가바르다스나 균제 대신은 드나 다니 여마니스 저는 숨바로 디고 라오메 바나 드나 다니 여마니스로
And in this very text from Aryadeva, the Chatu Shataka, the 400 stanzas, he says that there is no independent self or autonomous self or self which exists from its own side. Yeah, so that's why we discard that self, we negate that self. So when we say selflessness, it means there is no self which could be inherent or intrinsic or which could exist from its own side. Yeah, so that's one stanza in the 400.
나도스레 다 드나 신전에 찬다리게 쿠란게 우만 주변나라 지드라야라 초나로 때네 신다 줘봤다르스 대신 풍부남라 때네 소 때네 대신 풍부남 때네 군주 선생시 줘봐인스 그라 차서는 나라서 모터를 시작해서 모터 세대기 고 얘나 되게 초발라 때는 모터 스타그도 왔어. 얘나다 마서는 모터 쓰라고야 말해. 컴배 차셔되게 마서는 컴버 쓰라고야 말해. 강하다 차셔도 상고야. 차셔도 상월 때네 고다내 모터를 다. 어디 컴바를 다. 다들 민다이스도 왔어. 대난 신시 풍부라 때네. 디 오다 미래다 디 튼루르다 디 하르다 지가 강아 두서는 봐 대풍불라 때나 따바 짜냐 사되게 알았어
And there is another stanza in the Madhyamaka Avatara from Acharya Chandrakirti when he says that any phenomenon needs its own branches, how can we say, members or branches, yanla in Tibetan. Yeah? So it means that any phenomenon needs its parts. And when the parts are assembled or gathered all together, then you can find a conventional person, for instance. When the aggregates are there, then you can find a conventionally existing person. Yeah, so of course you can apply that to any other phenomenon. Yeah, when you speak about a car, a house, and so on, you cannot find a car without its parts, and you cannot find a house without its parts. Yeah, so you need all the parts all together in order to apply the name. This is a car, this is a house, and so on. Yeah, so here for a sentient being, we could say this person is a human being, or this person is an animal, or this person is a deva or a god, and so on. Depending on the aggregates, that's because of those aggregates we can apply the name human being or non-human being and so on.
나가졌습니다. 다 도우스나 드네시다. 다 저당 머리 봤어 되게 곧 머리 받다는 이 샤송 가사가 단서도 추가 단서 이 샤. 된다고 머리 봤어도 가사세디 오다 풍부라 떠바면 라모네 여바 칭지 가사도 뚜루라 이네 거기 때문에 나와지 되게 반지대요. 제가 가사 뚜두 임바들라 고 친지 로바라 봐. 워 뚜두도 셔발라 고 디버 쳤어. 대단 신자 최고 등지 세대 가차송슬라데. 배나 풍부 세대 셴라 때네 따바 정지여라. 뚜두잖냐라. 때문에 나와진도 저거 똥바래. 이네 거 때문에 나와진도 이만 진대기도. 제가 대티바레스로 ngā ki shōrāng sūnchū sōrū ki gyabsi te tuwa te.
So here, when we speak about this ignorance, we said that there are two types: ignorance which grasps at the self of the persons, and ignorance which grasps at the self of phenomena. Yeah, so a twofold kind of ignorance, and this ignorance, as we said, is totally discordant with the way things exist. Yeah, we said that the person exists in dependence or in relation with the aggregates. Yeah, and this kind of ignorance grasps the person as totally opposite of that. Yeah, from that. Yeah, as if the person were to exist from its own side or without any relationship with the aggregates and so on, without really relying on the aggregates. Yeah, so that's totally the opposite, and that's the same for any other phenomenon. Any other phenomenon like an aggregate is necessarily not autonomous, not independent, or not without relying on its parts and so on. But our self-grasping ignorance apprehends this aggregate or this person and so on in a very discordant way and on the opposite way things exist, yeah, as we said. So that's why His Holiness says that, and we arrive on page 36 in Tibetan. Yeah. That's why His Holiness quotes again the first stanza of the chapter 26, obscured by ignorance. Yeah. Ignorance obscures the way things are.
ngāyādā ngānsu du sāndā, tēndē yīndū lēkā chīpā bō, lē sāpā bō, chā ngānsu lē sētū sāngwā chēgī, kārī yīsī na mīngzāṃ chī mātā chēgī, tē shēnā tōpa mē bē lē sāngēn chē yā mā rē, lē chē yā mā rē, lē nyōngēn chē yā mā rē, chā tōpa mē bē tēndē chī yā mā rē sī.
And so here, when we speak about the person which accumulates karma, the person which acts the agent of any activity and so on, it exists as a mere designation, as we said. Yeah. So it means that it necessarily depends on something else. Yeah? So we should not think that karma doesn't exist or the agent doesn't exist and so on because they don't exist inherently. They exist conventionally. Yeah? So that's a very important point here.
ngānsu 36, page
Yeah.
36.
Page 36. Yeah.
Can you see it? I've just put it up.
Yeah. Okay, we have it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
good.
you, Daniel.
Thank you.
chedan ngānsu pēsēn chēne sāng tāng kore. Kāyīn sī na, pērā chā shabā yīna, pēsēn chabā yīna, o tā nāngu ngāñi yā wu khu mō chūng kār chē nāng sī. Pēsēn chēne rō. Chedan kār chē tā, nī yā gu mō gu wā tā jīk chūna kāpi tōng yā māng chā sī. O jī tā kērāng sāng gu tā yā māng chā sī. O dīndē chī kī tō nē, tēlā tēne, tēne ngāñi yā wu khu mō chū sē chī tā, tēlā tē, 강에 내주 마고 저 산로 코알라 때네 되는 아니야 고마죠 산답시 로치라 때네 계셔도다 제가 안조 강인서 레 제바보다 레 세데다 제부 뇽에도 사마 강인서는 때네 장장지 용고라 마도 셴라 뜨메게 되는 라운드 두샹게 동해시 민도 근데 그 라운드 두샹데 두 대겐게 레시 민도 승안조라 What is that?
So we, of course, need many examples. We need illustrations in order to illustrate that point. Like, for instance, if you find someone who says, "Oh, I could not sleep well," yeah, so then the first thing you will ask, then because of what? What is the reason? Why can't you sleep well? Yeah, so we could say because you drank too much coffee, or because you think too much, and so on. Yeah, so it's necessarily because of something. It's necessarily depending on causes and conditions. Yeah, so we can understand that. We can understand that there are many. There can be many reasons that can impede someone to sleep well, and for any other situation. Yeah? So we say that depending on what, depending on which cause. Yeah. So we understand that. We say that the activity or karma and the person, the agent, and the effects, the results of karma and so on, they are necessarily in mutual dependence. Necessarily, they exist in mutual dependence. There is no karma, no agent, and so on, which could exist without any relation with anything else, or in an autonomous way.
나도 쓰주자. 다데네 나라도 미신 나로 태베 가서로 다치게 참지 기부 쉬쉬요라. 참지 약간에만 못 태대로. 오다 된데 드즈 강에 임바 있는다. 기부 있는다. 지 가리 있는 소소라 강 중요지. 가래 용이 양이 가래 용이 여봐이나 뜻지로 때네 계시 짱냥 셔고로 마도 떠밤에 베랑 온진도 조셔봐 가야 말했어. 음.
So here, the same for any lifetime for anyone. You know, if you have a happy life, someone who has a happy life, someone who has always problems during this life, then it's necessarily depending on reasons. It's not like this from its own side. Yeah? It's not like someone is unhappy and there is no reason, and someone is happy and there is no reason. There's necessarily causes and conditions. So you cannot find happiness and unhappiness in an independent way. If it exists, it necessarily depends on something else.
계승 안 하줄라 드레스안 당 거래. 다 드라샤샤나 계란게 모터 파킹 제다데 지전 누트체나 샤체 지전 모터 때 손을 감아 가셔실라 police 캔로스로 모터 모터데 제자디 딱 가르치네 가르 먼저 있나서 상당 거 봐. 코디 라원에 두고서 라원에 두고서 임바 이나 고도 그수 가르 먼저 봐 이나서디 요마로 봐. 계디 요마로. 저 가르치네 대 중화래 봤을라도 지금 땡네 중화로 봐다. 네즈 먼저 팀다 팀계기 내가지 잡아라 땡네 그럼 모르도 불수 계십니다. 하고서 어제 때네 좀 때는 배전들아 다들 도저 때네 좀 세대 배전래 봐. 되는 시간 안 줘. 뒤도 참아 된다 상당 거래.
Oh, we can find many examples like this. That, for instance, you put your car on the wrong place, yeah, and the police comes and carries your car away. So then it's necessarily independence on causes and conditions. Yeah, you cannot say, oh, it happened like this and with no reason. There is necessarily a reason. Yeah, why the police came and took your car and to put it somewhere else. Yeah, so we have to understand that as long as you do something which is not according to the law, then necessarily the police will come and will do something. So it depends on a system, a framework, a law, and so on. It cannot exist from its own side or without any relationship with anything else. Yeah, so we need those kind of examples in order to ascertain that point.
다 되나 신경 안 하죠. 강에 그리 뭐지. 다 된다고 되면 모터 샤다 만데자 police 캔도하디 레디 경험만 사바를 봐잖아. 그 말을 봐. 되게 계지 말을 봤어. 단다 먼저 봐줘. 초수진이나 먼저 봐줘. 제발 레디 제발 때네 리부 단다 중국도 왔어. 계산 나라도 미진한 게 디도 간듯이 인바 이내야 드부 마고 쉬우지 산다라나 제셔봤잖아 통주 윤족이 레스리 통주 뉴에서나 미즈 다가나 사셔베 레게 드부데 미즈 다가라나 미셔 요시 디르데 마고 쉬우자래 nga thama mangu tenwa la dina nga chi che sun se da nga kabi mangu tungwa la dina chi che sun se da nga shekzi xia mang zha shenga mo sa mang zha chi che ni chi che sun se da ta tinte chi ne chi mangu xiu xin yung wa rwa ta nga na zu ne na sa re je mangu xiu xin tinte da la tene yung de ka na ta kar che sa na ti kya nga mal tri ke mdo chen da ra ke so rwa tsama rwa 겨우나마들 나라도 류들이 동해라 신신신 깨제 대여데 이네요 참아 내데 겨우나마들 제무소 내 단다 제소 단다 지기도 될라 때네 되죠 될라 때네 되죠서 안도 디산다 뭐
Yes, sometimes we can face many difficulties. Yeah, sometimes we put the car on the wrong place and so on, so that the police comes and puts your car away. And so there are many things like this. So we have to check, where does it come from? Yeah, why do we have problems? Yeah, so we have to check, the causes and conditions from that. So, for instance, there are many things that we experience now in this very lifetime, and if we look for the reasons, they don't necessarily come from the past lives. They are not necessarily the results of past karma. Yeah. So, for instance, if someone says, "Okay, I have some difficulties because I smoked too much," or "I have some difficulties because I drink too much coffee," or "I have some issues, health issues because I eat too much fat," and so on. So we cannot say, "Oh, this is because of my karma from the previous lifetime." No, it is done because of this activity that we have in this very life. Yeah. So there are many things like this. We call them the results that can be seen in that very lifetime. Yeah, the results of our activities that can be seen in that very lifetime. So of course, the fact that our body is suitable to be unhealthy. This is, we can say that as long as we are born in this life, it is because of karma. Yeah? So we can say we have that body because of the karma. But the fact that we are sick or ill or we have any kind of sickness because of a misbehavior, we cannot say that it comes from the previous lifetimes.
계산 겨우나마데 레사발 때네 배는 내도 붙이 두바래 내도 들지 다 내디나 잘라 사연하지나 사연 야가 로게 두글 어디 쓰디나 쳐시거든 하고서
Kandagela.
배랑 알아서 수구전 내도 붙이
Yes. Oh.
다 되게 나로 야가지 로그인데 두 가지 로그인데 다 상마 센딜라 쳐셔봐라
No.
하고서 알아서 담보 내 지녀 내 지녀야지 그렇잖아 디녀 사나 다 되게 나 가로인데 신도 로그인데 와다 야나 세나 로그인데 야나다 메도라지 답샤긴다 가르치긴다 되고는 직 세셔봐 디츠노데 나라서 내도 버저 부모가보디 겨우나만에 레사다 두 되게 나라로 디도 강하니 받았대. 대화다, 동해다, 되게 강하냐 돼. 망쳐지. 가짜를 쓰는 가짜 고주 공한테 간에 연구해서 선다게 나라로 나라서 레시다 민다 할 때네. 된 디도 다 민다 되게 용되게 그랬어.
So yes, we can say that the body that we have now is a kind of recipient. Yeah, it's a kind of how can we call that in English? Like a bag, we could say, or like a cup, or like a recipient. And so yes, this recipient comes from the past life because it is the result of a past karma. But what we put in that recipient, we can put fruits, we can put the dirty things and so on. So we cannot complain after and say, "Oh, this is the result of my past life." No, it is the result of the misbehaviors or the wrong activities that we have in this very life. Yeah. So there are many results like this. We could say that 95% of the results that we experience in this very lifetime are the results of these activities in this same lifetime. They are not the results of the past activities.
that's right. Chazang, ta tene tasam sidwa. Teba mebe rangwachina chuyo mare se, wadi nezira tene tige de shewa, ta nganzo, ale te tamche tene tasam, tene chusha tuwa, chila tene chukudu, tsendi ngaranga didu tu tsama, tene chukudu, chila tene chukudu sina, kala teba rebe sina, wada gyudan kenshila tene chusha, gyugende gadu chuba rebe sila du, o mangche tsendagadil chusha nyore duwas. Pena ngarazo dene chire, 아, 사상시체 되네 당보배 그냥 참고 쉬어지다 차시요 봐. 당보 차시 배 차시고 기부 쉬어져 참고 쉬어지다 저 그냥 용절나게 대 차시 좀 싸우네요 말봐. 얘네 되네 되네 너는 고소제 용자더니 냐 배대 타마 카가 찬을 수도 와. 기경하면 제가 말어 돼. 아, 천 나가랑 근데도 콜레가 건주문 주셔봐라 때네 때 용되게 알아봐. 로아 오두스 가르서보다 쪼천 들러라래 두서요 존재들에.
Yes, so that's why those situations, yeah, they necessarily exist independent on something else. It is very important to think about that. Yeah, we can say that any situation comes depending on something else or in relation with something else. Yeah? And though the happiness and unhappiness that we can experience in this lifetime depends on many things, many causes and conditions. And when did we produce those causes and conditions? Most of them in this very lifetime. Yeah. So, for instance, you have two people, they get together and they marry. So at the very beginning, they are only happy. Yeah? They have no problems. And slowly the problems come and they fight each other and then they separate. Yeah, so they get separated. So we cannot say that it is the result of the previous lifetimes. It is the result of the activities and the words they say and so on in this very lifetime. Yeah, so it's very important to think about that.
다들 내기는 내 준비 제시해도 가나. 되는 넘버민 비 드부서 납치다. 교통비 드부서지다. 다른 드부서지다. 근데 제시해 윤도 가나. 단 드부송이 남사 민다와 제시해 윤도 가나. 되니 따라차샤바이나 로임 제바데네 소속이 추만 숨마도 왔던데 용거래서 답에 접을 때네 용거래서네 계시게 도와서라도 대 답에 접을지다 용거야래서 얘네야 대 선다가 되는 소속문에 양답을 셔봐야나 대 참아까 두고야래서 선들랑 알아서 야고 셔봐야나 아주 싸게 두고야래 봤어 남자들 전죽성 게 두고야래 아주 제 야고 셔봐야나 네저 근데 중주지다 나좀 고 토다 토로 경험에 레 가리 여와 있나 레 도들 나좀 참마 메시 되는 교당 땅 토야게 나라줘라 튕긴데 여러 봤어 다 튕겨 예신도 때 맞으자 대바 있나 딱 뒤든 도서시 제 대바 있나 그봐 튕기도 맞으자 미팅에 깨게 루대 바이나 딱 안서 강에들 좀 말아가 여러 봤어
Yeah, so so here that's why we can find different descriptions of the results. You have the ripening result and the result which is according to the cause and the dominant result. Yeah, the different kinds of effects or results. Yeah? So if we speak about for like a situation like misbehavior, like sexual misconduct. Yeah, so of course you accumulate bad karma and then you can experience some very negative results depending on that. Yeah, but still in this very life, if you behave correctly and with dignity and so on, then it's for sure you can discard that type of causality, that karmic causality in this very lifetime if we behave correctly we could even obtain enlightenment. We can produce bodhicitta in our continuum. Yeah, so we have all the how to say favorable conditions. Yeah, we have all the favorable conditions, but if we use those favorable conditions in the wrong way, then in this case, all the proper conditions will be much rare, and all the discordant conditions will be much numerous. So that's why we have to be also careful in the way we behave in this very lifetime.
그랬어. 다들은 말이 집에 양식 치르스. 두지 남바 숨보 다스. 뭔바로 두치스. 세대 송도아. 자외 나라라. 다들 가능스나 말이 베스. 단지 셰게 간소 당나서 단다 간사 뚜루 장냐 계셔서 때는 줘봐. 때는 좋아서 계시면 쉬셔라. 다 머리 봤어 되게 때밤에 왜 라원친데 여반 생도 꽤 삼아 데려 있다. 노트 데려 있어. 나라도 메시지가 나 노트 가르치는 거라서 뇨라 사야 지어 봤어. 뇨라 삼아 가인스나 나도 수수수무로 파장냐 수도 꽤 파열을 견장냐 주기도. 소소로 노트치에 매봐라 상당도. 그래? 파기 견데 배도거라 견을 하지 소소라 견시에 매봐서잖아. 누구 파수와 대장냐지나 용되게 알아봐. 제가 머리 봤을 때 신수가라 때와 많이 때문에 라운치는 여바지 진대기도 진대바 될라 때네 다 뉴모 현다 기기도 뉴모 현다 기발라 때네 레년바 망고 사기도 레달레 드라마다 사기도 슬어져라 달레 드라마다 사발라 될라 때네 넘버 10에 된도 되네 아니스나 넘버 10방 나삼게 된도 바샤 야가 샤에도 두가 샤에도 담만다 바샤 직샤용도 바자 될라 다 대샤인데 매워 서 타시 맞아 봐는 코 드부시 요야레스 두가 전에 두가 드부시 요야레 야가지에는 야가 드부도 요야레스 다 두가 지금 봐이나 두가 되게 드부디 다 가서 누구냐나 다 가인서 타마들 세바다 렘바 세되게 순답자 시바 조용을 시바 조용이 겨와셔마다 그냥 레기 드부 딱딱 조용 그래스 어디 나갔다 머리 집에 영수실 어디라고 그래 양세바를 깨워라는 그래서 나와 두지 남바 숨보다 뭐뭐 두지서 규숨보대로 펜식이 규숨을 때는 규숨을 상인도 가나 대라드는 데는 두지기 교대가 내죠 되는 게 세바 조용 그래서 와다
So here, as we said, so we arrive on the first stanza in the quote. Obscured by ignorance, one performs the three actions that lead. There is also duje, so they are composed. So here it means that in the very first stanza of the chapter 26, we find this ignorance which is mentioned. And as we discussed a lot, we said that everything exists depending on something else, everything exists in relation on something else, and so on. So, as we say, ignorance is the main mistake. Yeah, it obscures the way things are, as we said. Yeah. So here, as we said, this is the main how do you say, troublemaker. Yeah, this ignorance is the main troublemaker. Yeah, sometimes we tend to think, oh, we are pure and so on, we are perfect and so on, but all the mistakes are in our continuum. And because of that basic type of ignorance, this is the main mistake that we have in our continuum. It makes us believe that phenomena exist without depending on something else, that persons could exist without depending on their aggregates and so on. So that ignorance, which this self-grasping ignorance, will produce other afflictions, all the other afflictions. And because of all these afflictions, we can accumulate different types of karma, and mainly bad karma, negative karma. And those karma we would leave imprints either in the consciousness or in the mere I, the mere me. Yeah, and those imprints, if we don't do anything in order to purify them or to enhance them, then they will necessarily produce results. Yeah, so those results are the different types of rebirth. So that's why we find here in Tibetan, yeah, Yangsi or Punarbhava, yeah, the rebirth. Yeah, so because of those imprints that we have in our continuum, and then in the 12 links of dependent origination, we have craving, grasping, appropriation, as you wish, and becoming. So then as long as those three come together, then they will produce a rebirth. Yeah, so that's why the very first stanza speaks about those three types of causes, we could say. Yeah, ignorance, then karma, and the consciousness. Then they all come together, and the actualizing links, as we said, craving, appropriation, and becoming. Then they produce a new rebirth.
네, 나도서라. 다들만서 원아서 머리베스. 때 코나니게 대 통화라 티베스. 머리베 돈이 떠발 티기레스 티베스. 다 돈이 떠발 티바 인도 꽤 가려 용거레스. 돈이 마도바지 돈이 마도나 꽤 가려 용거레스. 돈이 마도나 되네. 아, 코스의 용거레스 다 된다. 하고서 계속 돈이 떠와이는 코안 가베를 받친다기 가래. 돈이 마도바는 코안 중에를 받다 용거야 가래. 근데 이 말인데 코 용거레스 다 된다. 그러와. 슝네 덴바시 송바나. 동해 덴바라 남라 망보시 송시스. 동해 대다 다 두지기 동해 셰바. 깨와래 깨와래행기 샹마체. 라메 바래. 뉴몬베 샹마체도 여바텔라. 차밤 두지 있으라 그래. 제발 시바 코아 타달라 캡션 여봐. 대답은 니는게 공부제 와도 라메 샹마체 임베 임바데 두지기 동해도 송네. 소다더래. 다들 내가 전부 쉬운 거야래. 알아 당고 드라마제 로스다. 드네냐 되죠. 되세요.
So here, after that stanza, so we have to understand why, what are the defilements or the shortcomings of ignorance. So His Holiness says on the bottom of page 20, so if we ask ourselves why the fact that ignorance veils our vision of the reality of objects is a shortcoming, then of the Four Noble Truths taught in the whole tradition, true sufferings are described as manifold. And among these sufferings, what is called conditioning suffering concerns birth under the power of karma and afflictions. And this all-pervading conditioning entirely pervades samsaric becoming in the sense that, deprived of freedom, we are under the yoke of afflictions. Having explained the conditioning suffering, that is this birth of the appropriated aggregates, which is deprived of freedom and which is constrained, if we consider the causes that generate it, well, it is produced in dependence on fulfilled karma. And this is not to say that, so there is at some point the suffering of change, which is mentioned in Tibetan. No, sorry. So it will become after. Yeah, so it is just the conditioning suffering now. So then now we read the part of the text, and Venerable Geshe-la will explain that point.
아야, 다 됐어. 제가 슝네 덴바시 숨바나스. 슝다 좀 된데 콜로 담배 가서 덴바시 숨. 다좀 된데 숨바 될라 때는 는 다 남바 요새기 대마시세디 강 숭구야래 남바 요새 숭구야라마도 디 가수라다 태바 쳔베 숭구레 태바 메베고 숭구야마 세계지면 봐지 남바 요새기 최게 중시라데 중시스나하고도
Yes.
중시라데 대마시세드레스 좀된 대기 최 당부 숭배 값네 대마시세드 숭레스 대마시가 나로는 좀된 대기 당부 동에 대마 숭바레스 다 동에 대마 숭인데 가라다 동해 덴베게 난게 동해 덴바달라 알레 담보제 동나와 세달라 송체체 동해게 동해 유로 동해 차바 두지게 동해서지 다또 니게 나라나 간사 동해 가라 못해 지게 알았으나 차바 두지게 동해서 못해 지게 알아 차바 두지게 동해서들 코아스를 데리 다나 코아스를 데리 나저 코아를 타르고 두스라도 왜 차바 두지게 동해들 타르고요 나저 동해다 차나 치마는 차워셔서 제 인지 문에게 인지 쳐보시게나 아 차바 두지게 동해들 차나 치마를 차워 주셨으라고요. 상단다 사마 차바 두지게 동해서 내가 상단고요. 좋아?
Here, the main point here that's very important is that the whole tradition, the whole Buddhist tradition, we speak about the Four Noble Truths. Yeah, and we could say that it is the measure of being a Buddhist. If we are Buddhists, we necessarily accept the Four Noble Truths. Yeah, so it's not a question of do we belong to the Mahayana, do we belong to the Pratimokshayana, and so on. This is not the point. The point is, if we are Buddhists, we necessarily accept the Four Noble Truths. And so then here, this is the basic framework of any Buddhist tradition. This is the very basic, the very ground or the framework of the Buddhist tradition is that to speak about the true sufferings, true origins, and so on. So here, the true sufferings, when the Buddha said, then we have to understand the true sufferings, then it's threefold. So we have the manifest suffering, suffering of change, and conditioning suffering, yeah? All pervasive conditioning suffering, yeah? And this is the main mistake. This is that suffering. The conditioning suffering is the main mistake. And we could say that it is samsara. If we speak about samsara, we speak about this all-pervasive conditioning suffering. Yeah. So if we say, "Oh, I wish to get liberated from samsara," it means I wish to get liberated from that type of conditioning suffering. And if we try to cultivate compassion, especially great compassion, we wish that all sentient beings be freed from samsara. It means be freed from that conditioning suffering. So this is very important to understand that point.
차바 두지게 동해서 차바스라 그래. 차바스야데 소수께와 가세 렘바이네. 라이 코아 마세게 봐도 차바스. 나도 토마 메바네. 동행기 풍부 오다 차바 두지게 동해서 돼. 다데는 안zo 봐. 지게 타로 마토게 봐도 되네 차바 두지게 동해서 돼. 딘네 더브레스. 네 되게 나와라다. 동행게 동해 로기인데 규로 동해 로기인데 야는 대화 가리나 즉 가리 상부지 로게를 냠바지 로가 사마테 룩세겠네 더부터 차바 두지게 동해서 차거든. 봐. 제가 차바 두지게 동해서 돼. 다 가라스로데 데라 코아스라 디 마레베 왕게 레사 레게 왕게 두기레스데 차바 두지게 동해데 조용 거래. 두드가는 페라차샤는 아마도 메즈딜 샤샤나 파마니게 쿠다 체발라 때네 남시 파게 슈바 다랑 게 파메 쿠다데 차바 두지게 동해서데 같이 말해. 데데 초아가 야 말해. 동해다 교회 동해다 데레게 초아스게 야 말다. 얘네 남시대 슈바 다랑게 캬바 도시 동네 다가나 조사래. 겨왕아메기 바도하던 바도의 뉴스를 좋아해. 근데 밤에 고라가 쇼제 미게 달길챈로디 송윤데 딱 가르쳐라. 디바로 동바지야 말 세겐지 동바야 말 동바지야 말에. 바도 뉴스 좋아하다 뭐게 싹 슬레바 치부지냐라. 그냥 때려 마도치기 가서 그래. 나라도 답 따라잖아. 답 드린 시즈가더라. 죽으러 봐. 이슈
니슈, 추구, 그거다.
죽으러 봐. 자, 좁게 조선스러도 죽으셔도 치아인 거야 봐. 디바로
yes.
동바지야 말아 봐. 어디는 싫어. 봐도 뉴스 좋아하다. 밤에 고라가 되는 쇼바다. 걔랑 나 봐도 내가 누지고 풍부지 야래. 풍부도 뭐가 참 잘쏘다. 어디서 영대가 더 돈다로 와. 동행이 동해 가서 캬방 도지기 동해에서 캬바스를 깨와 탐제도 캬바. 깨와 통마 매바네. 어다배 탈마 탈마 못하고 봐도 캬바스라도 캬바 도지기 동해에서 도서를 쓰는다 이제. 그렇죠?
So here the all pervasive conditioning suffering. So we say all pervasive, chaba in Tibetan. So it means that it pervades any samsaric rebirth, anywhere you take rebirth because of karma and afflictions, and you necessarily are associated with that type of suffering. Yeah? So it means that these appropriated aggregates that we have now, the contaminated aggregates, that kind of suffering. Yeah. So as we said, that kind of suffering, that conditioning suffering, is a kind of recipient, like we spoke previously of the body, but we could say that the aggregates that we have now, those are the conditioning suffering. And then within that recipient, you can put anything else. You can put the other types of sufferings, manifest suffering and suffering of change. But this recipient itself is the conditioning suffering, the pervasive suffering. So it means that as long as we wander within samsara because of ignorance, then the contaminated karma and so on, we necessarily belong to a type of suffering. We necessarily have that type of suffering, this conditioning suffering. For instance, if we speak about human rebirth, you have first the bardoa, the person in the bardo. Then as soon as the time of the bardo is over, then there is no break. Necessarily the consciousness of the bardoa will get associated with the cells of the parents. So there is no break, there is no second of break. There is necessarily the instant after, the consciousness of the bardoa will necessarily mix with the cells of the parents. So it means that the bardoa itself, himself or herself, and the person who takes rebirth as a human being are necessarily associated with that kind of pervasive suffering. So here, there is, as Gisela said, we are today the 19th of February. So yesterday, as long as the time of the 18th has been over, then necessarily, naturally, the 19th comes. There is no break in between. So that's exactly the same. Just after the bardo and the bardo, the in-between state has finished, then there is no break, and the consciousness of the person will necessarily take rebirth also within that pervasive conditioning suffering. So that's the main point here.
나대잖아. 최상다 나라서 레기 왕기 두세게 레기 왕기 두에게 다 동행이 나와네. 캬반 두시기 동해도 두고야래스. 전다 알아서 밀기기나 다 부모한테 두고야래스. 되게 나와야 당고 미수 기립에 된데서 두용 거야래. 다랑 가서 밀다도서 더해마 쏟아지네. 다 베게 부모한테 두사래로. those got to know. That there are, dinner, Duchiki Dungesina, Laguiare, dene, Cabon Duchiki Dungesina, Delaguiare, Quasana in some chan, Jawanaman and did some charasene, some should do the did it. Tadonda, Tomba Yomarisa, some jairo.
So here, this pervasive conditioning suffering exists within our five aggregates. If we have human beings necessarily have the five aggregates, and those five aggregates are what we call nama rupa, the name and form. Yeah, as long as name and form are produced within the 12 links, then the five aggregates are necessarily there. Yeah, so the all-pervasive conditioning suffering is necessarily there as well. You know, we say it is all-pervasive or it is conditioning and so on. So this is the very meaning of samsara. When we say samsara is the joining with new appropriated aggregates, it means the joining with a new type of pervasive suffering. Yeah, there is no break within samsara.
Yeah, that then all this. Leda Numu Wange Kishin, Leda Numu Wange Jigdwag Chushanji Yimbaina, no Midabares. That then all the Takpa Mares. Tabam Shella Chasha Shella Matube Chibuasha Mares. The Kutan Gala Matube Ramache Mares, Taja Ramaching Tombares. Midabare. Dunga Yimba de Caresna, leg Shamanjare. Dene Dunga Ware, Tagarangshane. Taja Ramaching Tombare. No, Dene, Dadu to the Tombares, Teme Ramaching to the Tombares, Sene, Dunga de Keji Shi, Tamakol Sadeta. This one.
And donc, so here, as we said, the karma and afflictions will produce a new rebirth, yeah, a new rebirth, which arises and will cease and so on. So this belongs to the realm of impermanence. Yeah, so there is those aggregates and those rebirths and so on are necessarily not permanent, and so they are permanent and because they are impermanent because they depend on causes and conditions. They don't exist alone or without depending on something else. Yeah? So that's why our rebirth, samsaric rebirth, are necessarily depending on causes and conditions. That's why they are impermanent and not any kind of causes and conditions. They are independence on they are under the power of karma and afflictions. So because they are under the karma, under the power of karma and afflictions, they are necessarily contaminated, they are necessarily suffering because of that. And within those aggregates, we cannot find any person which could be permanent and unitary and autonomous. And we cannot find any substantial person within that. So that's why the first noble truth, true sufferings, has those four characteristics, yeah? Impermanence, sufferings, empty, and selfless.
Adresansa, Taduja. Chedanganzo, Ninjung Sims again. Ninjung Sims Calaviras, Renaissance Chilauda, Ninjung Sims. Ninjung Sims said, Oda, Caban Duchik Dungedele Tendek Simchila, Ninjung Sims. Caban Duchik Dungeda Tewa Tundanyamachila. Ninjung Sims de la Lavia. That and around the Ninja Sims Lauda. Ninja Sims lie in the Caban Duchik Dungedela Tendek Sim de la Ninjas Lavia. They shook Chambo Shiva Ganyandu, the Ninja Chambos La Yunguare. Tanda Caban Duchik Dungedela Tendek Sim de la Rani Caban Duchik Dungas Sim the Tended de la Ninjung Simla. Shen Tayaba Simja Trala Deva Degade, then Caban Duchik Dungedela Tendek Sim de la Ninjas La Yare. What they are on the Hago Gudwa.
So when we speak about renunciation, it means that we wish to discard any type of suffering, and mainly, of course, the conditioning suffering. If we wish to get liberated from the pervasive conditioning suffering, then this is the very meaning of renunciation. And if we apply that to other beings, if we wish to cultivate compassion, then that's the wish for others to get liberated from the all-pervasive conditioning suffering. Yeah, and if that compassion obtains a very high power, yeah, it's very, very strong, then we can call it great compassion. So anyway, if we speak about renunciation, or if we apply that to the suffering of others, then we will wish to cultivate compassion, and it necessarily relies on the all-pervasive conditioning suffering. This is a very important point to understand.
아드스 직성다. 다때네 다들 가서는 대답이 녀랭게 풍부 때 라와 매징스 냐와 렘베 풍부 다 말아서 동행게 풍부 때라 라와 매지 라와 매가 가면서 줄래다 유몽 중앙에서 라와야 말았어. 아 라와 매지 다 레용 시험하잖아. 레다 레기 시험하지 유몽 시험하지 말았어. 임바데 두지기 동행도 숨 때는 두지기 동행에서 때라고 알았어. 때 주간게 중앙에 있으나 겨원 두지기 레게 왕게 중앙에 있어. 겨원 두지기 레데 가래서나 시베딘데들 시베딘데 델 라소 마리 드베 영시 치르 서치디 돈다 시게와래 시베딘데데 레스라고 텔라데네 겨와스드 용데 요래 가르게 와래서나 오다 내 녀랭게 풍을 라오메 와래 샤와쟁이 바데 깨봤다 다 델라 주가래 와래서라데 당부 시베덴데 두버 시베덴데 용야기 교대 가래서나 다 가래서나 셀레니드레스 세파데 렘바니드레스 셀레니드 간데스 중구도 오슬라데 와다 남시 땡게 남시게 땡데게 땡데나 가서다 파샤 전다 가인스나 머리베 깽게 레사 레게 왕게 파샤 샤세게 파샤 델라테네 대 용데고 다 전다 다 된다고시 용도 가나 다 참아 투서 수로 돌아서 머리발 투서 머리베 깽게 중구야래 다 머리바다 가네 용스라 인데 다 나서 대응원에서 천왕그 랑시 동바진세 내준디 마시베 왕게 중앙다스 딜라 친지 로베 왕게 중앙레스 단 디셰바 쳐고도 세 전전 조다 현소
Oh, here, so we said the appropriated aggregates. So having explained the conditioning suffering, that is this birth of the appropriated aggregates, yeah, which is deprived of freedom and which is constrained. So if we consider the causes that generate it, well, it is produced in dependence on fulfilled karma. Yeah. So here it means that those appropriated aggregates are not free. Yeah, they don't wish anything. They cannot wish anything. They are not free. They are not autonomous. They depend on karma and afflictions. So they are under the power of karma and afflictions. So this is that kind of suffering. Yeah, this all-pervasive suffering. And so how those appropriated aggregates are manifested, we could say, because of the 10th link of the 12 links, yeah? Siva, the becoming, yeah. So or we can translate also existence, yeah, sometimes. So here becoming. This becoming or existence will produce the rebirth, yeah, the 11th link. And when we speak about rebirth, it is the rebirth of the appropriated aggregates, which are under the power of karma and afflictions. Yeah? So this 10th link, which is existence or becoming, can arise depending on its own causes. The number 8 and 9 craving and grasping. And how do they arise in turn? They arise because of consciousness, because those craving and grasping will make the imprints ripen, which we call becoming. And those imprints are within the continuum of consciousness. So those imprints are left by the karmic formations, and those karmas are accumulated because of ignorance. Yeah, so we can say that the number 10 is produced because of the 8 and 9, and the 8 and 9 are produced because the consciousness, which transports, we could say, the imprints, and those imprints have been left by the karma, the number 2, and karma has been accumulated because of the number 1, ignorance. So we could say that all those links of dependent origination, they find their root within ignorance. Yeah, so where those ignorance come from, we could say, as we explained before, this is that mental state which grasps things exactly at the opposite as they exist. Yeah, they exist in another way, and the ignorance grasps things as existing inherently, and things don't exist inherently. So this we can find those links step by step in the 12 links. Yeah.
다 대인 조단도 시야데 개침 칭제.
Mhm.
데 교관을 되는 좀 깨원 주지 그 레게 왕게 중앙에서. 깨와데 시베균 나마나마 여바 대짬래 동행게란 신자도 쟁기 깨와시 중앙에 남시는 대담해서. 나라서 안 깨와데 깨와서 그 땅보고나 깨연도거나 동행게란 신자도 깨봐 연도가나 그 시베균 코랑라 동행계획 신시 여러분이 때 예배 깨자 말다스 하고서
Yes.
때때 가인스는 규진 현직 되게 말할지 소용도스 규진 현직이 되는 거 동행이란 시장도 깨봐라 마도치게 곧배 균 십의 균 코라 동행이란 시도 예배 깨자 말아 계시 요나 십의 균서도 상기 살을 두게 때라 동행이 요거를 때요 말아봤어 시베 김파바 파투 로다나 나라서 나가 돈에 게 시바이나 당보드네 베아 시바 하바 되겠지 대라 군도 개주스라고 야래 드네 봐서는 나와 까나 봐 쳐봐말라 봐 니답 나나 봐 드네 오세게 셈스 시케션 거래 오세게 셈 신도 참어들래 신도 참으면 들을게 요말에 저 사마 뒤와네 니도 나놈을 견실래 되네 쳐보면은 가서 견실래 나와 가라면 가서 견실 되게 군도 개주인데 꽤 많고시 도스갈래 야나 마토치기 되네 생그라시 왜세 코란을 견뎌요 말했어
So here the text goes on. So, okay. So if we consider the causes that generate it, well, it is produced in dependence on fulfilled karmas. This is not to say that rebirths occur as having the nature of suffering simply by virtue of a prior cognitive continuum. Yeah? This is very clear here, because of course, when we speak about this rebirth, yeah, any rebirth is when it is a samsaric rebirth, it is necessarily associated with the all-pervasive conditioning suffering. Yeah, so because of the 12 links, as we explained, and those steps of the 12 links are very important to understand, of course. But when we speak about a rebirth or kiewa in Tibet, kiewa can mean production, can mean production as well. Yeah, so it can mean rebirth or production. So here, it's not because something is produced that it is necessarily in the nature of suffering. Yeah, so as we said here, the causes and conditions that produce suffering are karma and afflictions. If we say just because it is because of the continuum of the cognition, yeah, the continuum of consciousness or the cognitive continuum, then it would not do, because on the Buddha's ground, there is cognition, there is the cognitive continuum. And if we say that as long as there is a continuum of consciousness, there is suffering, then it would follow that a Buddha has suffering in his continuum. Yeah. So that's not the case at all. So if we explain things according to the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, for instance, then we could say that you have first the gross levels of cognitions. Yeah? And then if all those types of consciousnesses, those gross types of consciousnesses have dissolved, then you could find the 80 indicative conceptions. Yeah, you can say the 80 innate conceptions. And when those have dissolved in turn, then you have the appearance, the white appearance, and the red increasing, then the black imminence. And when the black imminence has dissolved, then you have the most subtle type of cognition, yeah, the clear light, the mind of clear light. And this mind of clear light has no defilement at all. It is not defectuous, so there is no defilement at all within that clear light mind. Yeah, so those defilements have to be found in the grosser levels of cognitions. Yeah, so you could say the dualistic appearances, white, red, and black, and the 80 indicative conceptions, and the gross levels of consciousness, and so on. So you could find the defilements within those types of cognitions, but not the subtlest one. Yeah, so it's not because there is a continuum of consciousness or cognition that necessarily it is associated with suffering. That's not at all the case.
진짜. 대단히 개수 10의 중기 때문에 동해의 연구 연락서 거래. 시바 지스네게 발라 동해의 요구래. 스테미도가 스타데 맵서 샤레스. 상기살 동해의 요마레스. 전주스마 사통볼라 내가 사케바 인젤 동해의 요마레스 봐. 다좀에길래 동해의 요마레스. 따라 차셔마. 세상다 가시에게도 쓰라데. 나라서 간스나 동해다 규를 동해를 다 쳐나. 시베 균식이 때문에 용시 대단한 까불 동행기 동해 와 되네 아 까불 주로 동해 정도 없어 까불 din지가 매배 내가 제 용도 없어 동해 맨 교회 동해 매배 니가 매배 제 내가 제 용도 없어 시베 균다 하나 열어봤어 세상 시베 균식 때문에 딱 참아 용이가 딱 되게 용 매배 딱 되랬어 시베 균식 해배 다 하나 열었어 대두 소화 좋아하다 동행이 소화 용해 동행 용화 인양 균 치네 다 하는 거야 고라 레기 균에 두사를 용 거야 동행 용화 대 시베 균삼 게때는 말다 써 디바라 현다시 캐셔로 뉴모스다 레스다 지기 바샤서 원래 있잖아 다 용되게 나라도 메시지를 쌓는다는 치부제 메시지 되게 나라라 아주 계산이네 에 되네 가서래 내 나사 드라마를 용해야지 죽인데 들려 말아봤어 얘네 치수 지기도 와서 아주 차라 망고 또 타마 망고데 살라사에 노트 망고 체 류종 마체 다 드라마를 시작할 때는 아주 동행 망고 그 이름을 계산을 때 말아봤어 민가시 류종 시부터 시부시 캐캐 체인도 또 강의데 민도 왔어 때 매워다 가있으면 이놈의 계산을 연구해봐 얘나 다 계산을 때 연구해봐 얘는 미사말 해봐 연구돼 요한도 왔어 그래 미가시 고 메스고나 심 기우시 대대게 지로 가셔 봐 심대장냐 제대게 지로 또 그런 소리로 강에도 소소 소리로요 제가 세배 균점 근데 용음에가 다 데려다스
Then the text goes on. So we are on the bottom of the page 36 in Tibetan, and the top of the page 21 in English. Okay, so as His Holiness said, this is not to say that rebirth occur as having the nature of suffering simply by virtue of a prior cognitive continuum. If that were the case, then suffering would have to remain continuously as long as cognition persists. Yeah, so as you said, and then because the Buddha has a cognitive continuum, then he would suffer. He would be associated with true sufferings and so on. But it's not the case. It's not the case for the Arya Bodhisattva. Yeah, from the first Bhumi to the 10th, they have no suffering, and no arhat also has true sufferings. Yeah. So this is very clear that it's not because there is a cognitive continuum that necessarily suffering arises. Yeah, it's not the case. So as His Holiness says, if that were the case, then suffering would have to remain continuously as long as cognition persists. To illustrate the manifest suffering and manifest the suffering of change based on the continuum of cognition, manifest suffering will arise in some cases, suffering of change in other cases, and sometimes will come a state devoid of both. Yeah, so it's not because you have a cognitive continuum that you will necessarily experience the manifest suffering and the suffering of change. Yeah, it's not the case. So that's why, depending on the continuum of the consciousness, then you will have pleasant and unpleasant feelings, and then depending on those, then you can experience the manifest suffering and suffering of change. So that's why His Holiness says, page 37, yeah, although suffering can be felt in relation to these pleasant and unpleasant feelings, yeah, here there is a mistake in English, it's not sensations but feelings, yeah. Suffering does not arise from the simple cognitive continuum. Yeah, so as we said, it's not the case. It's not because there is a continuum of mind that necessarily suffering will arise. So so it means that it comes from other causes and conditions. Yeah, as His Holiness says, but rather suffering is brought about within cognition by potentials or causes and conditions which are other. Yeah, we call them karma, afflictions, imprints, and so on. So that's why they are the main conditions depending on which suffering can arise. And of course, we can apply that to our present lifetime. You know, we can say, of course, our body can manifest different types of sicknesses. Yeah, but it's not as soon as we have taken rebirth, it's not that we will suffer all the sicknesses that exist. Yeah, so depending on the behavior in this life, then you can experience a kind of suffering and another one. For instance, someone who drinks alcohol, too much alcohol and so on, someone who smokes, someone who doesn't make sport and so on, of course, has more chance to suffer from a sickness or another one. Yeah, and someone who has a very good way to live his life, like has does some sport and so on, and has doesn't drink, doesn't smoke and so on, that person has less chance to experience a sickness. Yeah, so it's not because our body can experience suffering that as long as we have a body, then we necessarily experience all the sufferings, yeah, all the sicknesses. It's not the case. So that's why here, it's not because there is a cognitive continuum that necessarily suffering will ensue. Yeah, so that's why His Holiness says within cognition, there are some potentials or causes and conditions which are other and which produce suffering.
제가 nenga르 나라서 메신 디난게 디두 마 샤도 수수랑게 누트리션에서 연구였다 메세 다가라나 셰체 메세 다가라나 연구야래 스탄디 나저 내주디 닌치 민치 체랑아제 교다에 탑시 쳐버렸어.
Mm. And yeah, I forgot to translate what Genla said just before. Then some people sometimes are very happy in their lifetime, and some people they are always anxious, you know. And so it's not just because we have a mind that we will experience suffering. And again, Geshe-la said that in this very lifetime we can modify things, we can change things depending on our behavior.
야, 먼저 제가 땅 계시라니 최제에게 너바 여바이나 텔 최제에게 미들라 수구 대다고야 계심시비도 제 캐나라 제부 상부지 상기고 고방 조야라지다 탈배 고방 조야라지다 짜와치마 편지에게 되게 표준 써봐지 영 그거 이제나 선들라 다고 자리 계심시도 선디 수구대 알아 톨라만 저 탑시지 선디 샘디 대하냐지 가드 임바이나 밀리 계시셔든 베다 강에 강양 계시셔 놓으시로 어딘데지 다 요야지 탑시지 계심시도
So that's also a very crucial point here to say that, for instance, if we say we are a Dharma practitioner, so in that case, if we claim that we are a Dharma practitioner, then we have to take care of our health. Yeah, we have to take care of our body, because depending on that body, we can produce the causes and conditions in order to obtain liberation or Buddhahood, or even on the short term a good rebirth. Yeah, so all those causes and conditions are prepared within that lifetime, that present lifetime. So we should not spoil our body and our health. We should take care of them, yeah, because if you listen to some people, they always have problems and problems because they don't know how to take care of their health.
세상 알아도 삽소시비 최근에서도 시행인데 미스딘 로단지다 니바도 시고 겨와 심어 변지가 로단지 라고야 봐. 다 선디 로단도 니바도 시고 어디 계심 쉬도 와. 세대 간데서도 알레 심어 변지게 되네 아 동행 용망고에 되네 레디 레디게 더 빠야 탑시 저거 알레 sen 나가랑 게 미스디 탄다 대봉만에 야고지 요야 탑시 지연데 달랑가데 인지비지 도로 와.
Yes, we have to be careful with that if we want to practice the Dharma. Of course, we say, yes, the next lifetimes are very important, but they are very important to know and to know how to behave within those lifetimes. But this is prepared within that present lifetime. Yeah, we have to know how to live a correct lifetime, an appropriate lifetime. Yeah, because otherwise we can speak about all the sufferings that we could experience next life, and so on. But we have to prepare things now. Yeah, we within that present lifetime, we can abandon bad karma, we can produce good behaviors, and so on. So on those paths have to be, used. We have to go that way.
대단하죠. 개와 치만데 밀을 renchen 개바지 탑으로 쇼서 면함 개기야 봐. 단다 캐랑 탑대행게 밀을 renche디 톨라다나. 빈 다 캐랑 면함데 영사를 영사 말베스. 단다 유대행데 톨라단게 당게 제. 와? 그 제마지 영어셔스네. 팬다게 문도 와.
Like, for instance, we have many prayers. May I obtain a precious human rebirth? May I obtain a precious human rebirth, and so on. But this precious human rebirth, if we don't take care of this one, it's not very sure that we can obtain next life another precious human rebirth. Yeah. So if we have now precious body, precious human rebirth, and we spoil it in different ways, how can we be consistent when we say, oh, may I obtain in my lifetime, next lifetime, another precious human rebirth?
나더래. 다디 지상 안서 다 계란서 나로나 카셰는 되네 추글로 좀 전에 유름 붙인 상에 이거래 되네 카셰는 단도 사바 예스이거래 이나 수르지 임바이나 최세데 뭐이네 지간 줘야지래도 와 세지로 와
Mm.
최세데 melам 자냐 잡지 줘야 레문도 다스 오다 남배 최세데 많이 잔게 오정아 장라 자냐 제된 줘야 레문도 다스 뭐요 내세기 미 미지든 줘다 가르인 되게 시바 체고도 왔어 미지 디게던 담바지 라리다는 시도고도 왔어. 제가 치마 편제인의 디게 용어에게 탑시 디게도 판단에 두고야지 그 시기도 왔어.
Oh,
탈바사지로 탈도나 탈바사 턴시키면서 고만서 타발라양 되니 알아서 계시 가르시기도 슬러드 초신이나 타게차 장민지 장주고 샘기 계시 시기요래 초신이나 동ning 따외 계시 시기요래 탑시 순도 들어와라 되는 요야래 마다지 레무도 왔어. 제부 된대지 되게 얘나 메시지 따고 잡았어. 다 메시지 어?
as Angela says, there are many among you that maybe have studied for quite long the Dharma, and maybe there are some new people among this group. But anyway, anyone has to be careful with that present lifetime. Yeah. So we have to know exactly what means Dharma practice. Yeah, Dharma practice, it doesn't mean that we just pray, make prayers or just recite the money and so on. The Dharma practice is not that. The Dharma practice is to know how things, how they work, how things work, how this present lifetime can allow us to produce the causes and conditions in order to be happy. So when we wish to be happy in this life and we wish to be happy in next life and so on, or we wish to obtain liberation or omniscient mind and so on. So we always speak about method and wisdom. Yeah, the method side would be compassion, bodhicitta, and so on, and the wisdom side, the view of emptiness, and so on. So yes, we need to unify method and wisdom necessarily. And it means that if we wish to obtain any kind of result, we have to prepare the causes and conditions right now. So we have to use that present lifetime in order to hope for some results in the future. Yeah, that we have to prepare within that very lifetime.
나드스라 제상한서 레세드스 레세드 디송다 대라 레시 꾸는 거 캐버던 데면 토네 레섬 자와시 두고 요래스 꾸는 거 토네로 꾸는 거 가르상도스나 나라서 미스디 미스 림부 용해지 미스디 미스 대단 용해지 미스디 미스 가서 왔다 책이 된단 데만 용해지 미스디 된단 데만 중앙에는 디데라 얘기 최 넘버 다바 쭉 겨와 치마 편적에 디게 대한 디든도 쭉 겨와 치마 편적에 용과에 동해되게 디든도 매봤어 쓰지 누가 상탄 거도 두스 다치에 매자데 소소 강야라지 강야 디그라 마니라 아 정말 알아들어 다데든 디디 디펜더블스티 하고서
Oh, then it depends on what we do. Yeah, so that's why in the other section here in the text regarding what is called karma, it refers to a karma or an action that one performs in association with a particular motivation. Yeah, so here we need to know what means karma or action and so on. It depends on a very specific type of motivation. Yeah, so what kind of motivation do we have in this life? Yeah? We wish to obtain some result in this life or in the next lifetime and so on. So we need to know exactly what are the causes of sufferings and the causes of happiness, and we need to discard the causes of sufferings. if we don't do that and we experiment sufferings, then it is too late to recite Mani or Mani Padme Hum and so on. There's no use for that.
That's right. 나라서 소소라 강렬하지 못해. 강렬이 세게 탑시 셴다 가르스고다 저기 소소게 생계 강렬이는다 류게 내가 자라니나 다도 최대 제야랍들다 간지도는 지 탑시 나서죠. 디 바샤. 되네. 데 상계멜레가 아주 장아지 다도 우주 접지되는 용어를 했지. 아, 그 국벨레가 문에 국벨레가 치던 데로 왔어. 지나가서 근데 말했고 가래 임바 있는 소수 류기 최대라서 가래 류기는 내야 되게 나도 파샤에 탑시세. 패토에도 술래에 탑시세. 두 세네들이 메시드다요 탑시세 도어를 마도 대ሹ고도 소속의 남이 있는다 도고 있는다 둘러 전부 계절시나 가버리다는 지식이네. 녀가 깽냥셔지 다 파기 먹이 없어져. 소수 먹이요. 대가나 파게라티 소수가 네 말에가 강해를 지직 셔지 되잖아. 소수 교화단에 탑시기로 하지. 비게 셔야 되네. 가르 팽게 되든 파게라 강해서 마다 너 와대.
Oh yeah, sometimes we could find some behaviors like this. Some people have difficulties and they face difficulties. They don't prepare. They don't take care of themselves, of their health, and so on. All the conducive conditions for good health, they put them aside, and when they suffer, they are sick, then they recite so the mantra of Sangyamenla, the medicine Buddha mantra. So this is a practice of someone stupid. Yeah, so that's why we need to gather all the conducive conditions for good health. And we need to discard all the discordant conditions for good health. Yeah, if we don't do that, then as soon as you call your friends or your family and so on, then you only speak about your problems. Oh, I have this problem, I have this problem. It's endless. Yeah, so that's why we need to make sure that we use our present lifetime in a correct way, yeah, not in a discordant way.
다 소속이 명사티게디 소속이 다 조버지 시기는다 남이질 시기는 딱 봐디시는 대니 암전 얘기 좀 말아 봐. 얘네 키로는 귀 마셔 셔야 되고요. 다 니마다 봐 셔야 되고요. 봐. 되네. 되게 키랑 최대는 팽기래. 되게 되니 셰파르 뭐 기부 영화를 팽기래. 키랑 기부 영화를 팽기래. 대 팽기 말아 봐. 되네. 탐전 게 싫어도 와. 제가 수수기 강에 강이거나 강에도 세게 도 수수 칼라 사야다 동에다 니녀에다 가래 있는 저 3m는 수국 가서 저기 류중으로 제가 간지도는 봤어요. 탑시 적으로 마도 저기 대녀라도 니만 딱 와면 지가 쉬어야 되나? 그거니 저 말고 베개를 강했어야지 뭐 민도 왔더니.
Oh yes, some people always speak about their problems, and some people don't even speak a word about their problems, to their friends, to their family, and so on. But still, they keep things inside. Yeah, so it's not good as well. Yeah, it's not good either. Yeah, so they don't take care of their health. They don't take care of their body, of their mind, and so on. And they always face difficulties and problems. Yeah, so that's why it's very important to know how to discover the causes of those difficulties. So of course, you can take care of your physical health with some sport and so on. You can take care of your mind and so on. And then you will never speak about your problems to others. All the words you speak will be pleasant to others.
됐죠. 다 되네. 레기 다 대단지 레기 왕게 있어도 레기 왕게 있어도 인데 겨왕하면 죽을 상태야 말다 세게 디케라서 하고 왔지야스 레기 왕게 케랑게 제당의 왕게 케랑을 녀로데 용도 디케지 시기 요레스 데 레기 시발레 가사 레 시발라 레기 시바다 레기 시베 시발라 소모서 레기 균스그로 케랑 뇨라치 중제다 뇨라치 중다 냐나 그런가 내가 도자제 내가 도자제 제발 때는 대왕게 레제사래 레제스는 그런 레디 바자 냐바 샤용구야라 바자 냐마도 두서 무트네 용구레스 거다 다들 그런 매웠어요 탑시적으로만도 매웠으면 써야도 레냐바 가서 제발이 챈들 싸게 랑가 열었으라고 열어 근데 뭐지는 나라서 돈이 도야다 전주 섬계야겠더니 라까지 열어봐 근데 중원에는 나라도 알레벤다 자치와 인지선도 슉쳐서 깨봐이네 디버 베터 하나도 잡거나 자차를 쓰기는다 배 자차 둔주 자주 매마 차주고 열어 디버를 샤샤바이나 제가 두스가라 탑시 적으로 마도지 신나게 말했었다 레기 시바다 소베 토네 드부 동행용 아니지 대나 깨와 인세 레기 상황자 말다 하스로 그래야 나라도 부활 지거라 신동다 매도다 다도 sama 레기 상황자 레스 라기야 말다 깨와 인세 나라서 다라 디도 가인 바디 레기 상황자 레스 나라서 동행이라는 신체인데 레기 상황자 레스 되게 시거라 말도 참아 내셈 그 세력이 차대야 레기 상황자 라기야 말디 라기야 말다스
Yes, that's why that very important point to speak about karma. Karma doesn't necessarily mean karma accumulated during a previous lifetime. Yeah, karma means action. So what we do in this life also is very important. Yeah, so that's why all the problems that we have depend on the activities that we have, and it's not necessarily because of the karma that we accumulated during a previous lifetime. Yeah? So depending on the behavior that we have, we can have a good, happy lifetime and so on, a happy situation and so on. And we can discard all the negativities. Yeah, so here, His Holiness speaks about that. Since what is referred to as karma is affirmed as an action performed with a particular motivation, as its root, it falls under the category of a motivation and mind. Yeah. So here, yes, as we said, as soon as we acted in a particular way with a specific motivation, then the imprints are left in our mind. So yeah, I read the wrong sentence. So the sentence is the second one here. Once the karma is fulfilled, suffering arises as a result of the disintegratedness. Yeah, this is disintegration in the past tense, yeah, of the karma, and the disintegratedness of the karma. So it means just the continuum, the continuity of the mind, and within the mind, those imprints still remain. So when we speak about the disintegratedness of the karma, it means the imprints, the continuum of the imprints of the karma within the continuum of mind. So of course we can play on those imprints. We can discard many wrong imprints. Yeah, for instance, someone who cultivates compassion and bodhicitta and so on, he can erase so many bad imprints. If not 100%, we could say 70 or 90% of negativities are erased because of the production of bodhicitta. Yeah, so within that lifetime, it's possible. It's even possible to obtain enlightenment. Yeah, because we could discard all the negativities. Yeah, so that's very important to keep in mind that those imprints can be eradicated and some positive imprints can be enhanced. So as His Holiness says, it's not because something is produced that there is necessarily karma. Yeah, the sentence thereafter. Therefore, everything related to birth or production, kyewa in Tibetan, yeah, does not need to be under the power of karma. Yeah, everything that is produced is not necessarily produced depending on karma. For instance, a tree produces a fruit. Yeah, the fruit is produced. It's not because of karma. Yeah, so that's why we can say that karma is very important when we speak about happiness and suffering. Yeah, happiness and suffering are linked with karma, but it's not because something is produced that it's necessarily depending on karma. For instance, the fact that our mind is mere, clear and knowing doesn't mean that it is because of karma. That's not the case.
야야, 다는 가서 대샤.
All 속에는.
내 가서 단다 헬라 레시 다다 술 쏘든 거 얘가 꾸는 거 개봤던 데도 돈했어야 돼. 어디는 못 쓰고인다.
맞어.
제마.
So we finished here, and so here in Tibetan, we finished on page 37 de la Shebegunlong. Okay, and so we finished here for today.
장주 선조를 보시 마게 번호 계주르지 개바 냥바 매바야 고내 공도 배워로서 가래라와 고르 신감소 펜다대와 말린 중앙의 제너스와 땡지겨서 셔베 시대바도 땡겨로 제 Thank you very much.
Jinogela Karinche. Thank you so much.
Karinche.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci
All the
beaucoup.
translators.
Gracias.
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 Gracias, gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias, gracias.
Gracias.
Yanja yabu gosoy.
Buenas noches.
Ya por costo.
Ya, ya.
Gracias, Gisela.
Thank you, thank you. Gracias.
Candenche.
Rafa, gracias.
Gracias. Hasta, well, that means it's a swing gig.
Buenas noches.
We have next time, okay?
Yeah.
Next week.
Next week, yes.
See you next week.
Yes.
Bye
Yin
bye.
tayin.
La semaine prochaine.
La
Yin
prochaine.
tayin.
Merci.
Merci
Okay, merci.
Au revoir.
Gracias todos. Thank you very much. Merci
Yin
beaucoup.
tayin. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
No. Dunda chik jela chaljong.
Oh, dinda chik jala jayon.
Yeah. Toje chena. Candenche.
Ya la su.
That's so. Semjanango.
Ah, ya da simjana go sama.
Toje chena.
Buenas noches.
Din the Rinpoche.
Buenas
Buenas noches.